Awesome. Well, welcome to another episode of Scale Sales. Super honored to be joined by Mark from Vali Cyber. Mark, just to start with, if you could just give a brief introduction to yourself and also the company you're working at as well.
Sure. Thank you. So I've been in cybersecurity sales for about a decade, selling before that, but in security specifically. I joined Palo Alto Networks a little bit before their IPO, stayed there for about a year and a half. Then I joined Carbon Black and I ran sales in the West there for about 3 years prior to their IPO and acquisition. And then I was at SentinelOne for 5 years. I joined in 2017 when the product didn't work and stayed all the way through post-IPO and then took a year off. And now I'm at a small startup called Vali Cyber, which is in the exact same space that SentinelOne and Carbon Black VMware and CrowdStrike are in. It's specifically solving the problem of Linux and Kubernetes runtime protection. So it's a deeper dive into the most challenging operating system that's out there in the XDR space. And I'm currently running all of sales for Vali Cyber.
Yeah, definitely. I remember when we first spoke and you were sort of talking about what a great product you're sort of working with and how it sort of solved an issue that was seen to be unsolvable as such, if I remember correctly.
Yep, that's right. All the Linux agents that I had been responsible for selling when I was at Carbon Black and at SentinelOne had a fair amount of flaws. Living in the kernel is a bad idea. It's not portable. It creates stability issues. And then the other solution that SentinelOne pivoted to, the agents can be bypassed, which is not good at all. So Vali came up with a pretty cool solution that doesn't live in the kernel, but has tamper protection and can do some really cool things like rollback. And it addresses ransomware and cryptojacking in the Linux space and in the cloud, which is a pretty significant attack vector these days. So it is pretty exciting. We're tiny, and the other players out there are huge, but I'm determined to help bring this product to market one way or
another. Yeah, definitely. And just so the listeners can sort of understand, are there any strategies you've implemented as a company to sort of position and differentiate from the rest of the market?
Well, right now, what I'm doing right now is trying to keep things simple. Some of the things that I'd learned over my time at, more mid-sized companies was that there's a fair amount of distractions that are out there. And there is also inefficiency in hiring and the roles that are taken on in companies. So where Vali Cyber right now is, for me, the perfect size company because it's less than 50 employees. It's small. There's contractors in there too. And it really boils down to engineering focus. You need two things for a successful company in the startup world anyways, and that's really good engineers that are tight-knit, working together, a small group of excellent engineers, and salespeople to sell the product. Everything else is negotiable after that. And what I discovered in organizations like SentinelOne, as an example, they kind of, in my opinion, got out over their skis a little bit, hiring positions and roles that don't directly impact revenue or don't directly impact the product itself. So my current strategy is to stay as lean as humanly possible, hire experts who really know the space well, who have done it before, being really selective and really opportunistic about who I hire, and then just head down focus on trying to identify customers that have some pain in the space, working with reseller partners. So it's keep it simple and be really easy to work with is the underlying theme in everything that I do right now.
Yeah, definitely. It's sort of the best way to be is how, as a company at Scale Genesis, we want to grow as a startup is if we can sort of maximize at the moment we've implemented so many different tools to maximize our outputs to actually we can reduce our overheads as such. We don't need to be having a team of 30. We can actually just have a team of 6 that are doing the work of 30. And it is better because you can really hone in on the characteristics of the individuals you've got, develop them and actually keep that culture of the care for the company. I think as you grow, you will have those bad eggs that aren't maybe as invested as some individuals.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's to me, it's all about maintaining a healthy culture and to attract two things. It's remote work, right? So unlocking talent, regardless of where that talent lives, is valid. I think the go back to the office thing is it must be useful in some way to some folks, and it's occasionally useful to get together. But having the ability to hire folks who live anywhere in the country or in the world gives you access to a vast talent pool, and then keeping the culture transparent, positive, and 100% focused on the customer. Because if no matter what anyone is doing, you're in sales, because if the company doesn't sell a product, the company goes out of business. And you can get into endless raise money cycles, seed rounds, A round, B round. But if you don't have an eye on getting to cash flow positive, it's just endless, right? So right now, another good aspect of Vali is the fact that we're completely virtual. We're hiring opportunistically, and the CEO all the way through the CFO, everybody is just completely transparent about what we're doing, why we're doing it. And everybody knows that the reason we exist is to delight customers. That's basically the bottom line.
Yeah, and it's the best way to be. It's funny you mentioned it. Prior to this call, I was chatting to someone from VMware, and VMware just announced that they were going to everybody needed to come back to the offices 5 days a week. This guy, when he took the job, was fully remote. He's since moved house, and he now lives 60 miles away from the office. He's now driving 3.5 hours a day there and back to go to work. And he's a technical support guy for VMware. Like, he's just shattered. And I'm like, fair enough. I mean, I hate going 20 minutes on the tube, let alone through 3.5 hours driving.
I suffered through it, man. I suffered through it before there was an open-mindedness around remote work. Most of my career, I lived in the East Bay Area, California, and commuted 25 to call it 35 miles to the South Bay, to San Jose or Mountain View or Sunnyvale. And that was potentially an hour and a half each way. And you can be productive on the phone, only so much. I can't understand for the life of me why the larger organizations are putting a gun to everyone's head to come back to the office, because it's only productive in certain situations. If you're going to have a quarterly business review where you're talking about critical things, big decisions, direction of the company, yes, get together, get into a room, and more importantly, go out and spend some time together socially. That has value. Day in and day out, absolutely none whatsoever. This medium is perfect. Just video and you're done.
Yeah, definitely. I think, if you can be a company that instills a culture where you come together, you celebrate successes and everything, or if it's, as you said, an important thing that needs to be clearly vocalized to everyone, so someone's not just turned off their Zoom camera and has gone and made a coffee or making their lunch. Those are the things. And I was having a chat with someone else on the podcast, and it just comes down to trust. And what you find is a lot with generally, it's not really the rule of thumb, but the larger companies, there seems to be a lack of trust with their staff. Does that come down to actually maybe not having as much touch points with their staff or whatever it be? But to me, it just instills not trust. Why would I want to work for someone who doesn't trust me to do my job as well, no matter where I am?
Yeah. And that's as a hiring manager in field sales, it does boil entirely down to trust. And that's why I try not to hire people who I don't know at sort of a first level, like we've worked together or at least been colleagues in some way, or like a friend of a friend, like one level out, because the kiss of death is micromanagement. Like, that's the absolute stupidest thing anybody could ever do. It's awful. It's like you micromanage people out of a business. If you want someone to quit, micromanage them. But if you take the macro view, like I do, there's an implicit trust that boils down to work ethic first and competence second. Maybe not in that order necessarily, but without work ethic, there's no trust, right? So I might not talk to someone on my team for a week. I'll call them if I need something, and I know they'll call me if they need something. And I do have a team call every week. We're communicating. But when it comes right down to it, if I have to talk to someone every day or micromanage them, then I hired the wrong person. It doesn't work for me either. So that's why trust and familiarity with how somebody does their job is huge, because hiring is the scariest part of being a leader from my perspective.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny, really. One of my previous companies I worked at, so we were made to be in the office every day. Like, you weren't even allowed to. So let's say I was slightly ill and I was like, look, I don't want to spread it around the office. You weren't allowed to turn your laptop on at home. I didn't work in any defense or anything like that where it was confidential information. This is recruitment, no more complicated than what I'm doing now. And it's just mental, because they had that micromanaged sort of mentality of everything. One of the first things I got told is, if you want to be, at a time it's like 10 contractors, if you want 10 contractors on your book, we will get you there. Not me by myself, or I learned to do it, or you trust me that I can do it. It will be, we will get you there. To get past 10, that's on you. I'm like, and it was like everything was getting checked. Your emails weren't allowed, you weren't allowed any autonomy. Yes, okay, we were straight graduates, but I also am not very good at being micromanaged. I don't really like being told what to do, to be perfectly honest. But
do I agree.
No, this is why I've moved into this position where, yes, I'm 25 and I'm very fortunate I've got a director's title, but it's more so I can have a bit more autonomy. And yes, I make mistakes every day. Like that is given when I'm managing my team or communicating things. But this is why we started the podcast in a sense, is I'm learning from people who actually make mistakes as part of the job.
Yeah. I mean, you need to be given the opportunity to make mistakes. If the environment is toxic in that if you make an honest mistake, that there's like some penalty or public abuse or embarrassment or whatever it is, you're not fostering the idea of assuming responsibility and managing risk, because success, in my opinion, comes from the idea of understanding the high level goal and executing in real time. And to do that, you can't ask permission to make every decision. You're hired to make decisions, and you're not going to make every decision is not going to be the best possible decision. But if I'm batting 9 out of 10 on good decisions and I learn from the one where I might not have made the best decision, that's the correct culture to foster, because you're going to stifle creativity. Your people are going to be unwilling to take risks and actually move the ball down the field. It's about progress. And if you're not thinking about how to advance whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's a sale or a feature on a product, whatever it is, you have to have the customer in mind, and you have to be willing to sort of argue and fight for what you think is right. And maybe someone's not going to be there to sanity check your decision, so you just take your best guess. And good leaders have the backs of people who do that.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. And obviously we've touched on it, that hiring is a super important part, but obviously in sales, actually retaining the staff is just as hard in some cases. How do you go about sort of ensuring growth and commitment to the company's success?
Yeah, salespeople are motivated. Most salespeople are competitive and have maybe some innate curiosity. The really good ones are curious and ask a lot of questions, but they're financially driven, right? So if you can create an environment that embodies what we just talked about and let people do what they do the way they want to do it, because sales is an objective situation, right? You miss your number for 3 or 4 quarters in a row and you're probably not going to have a job. That's what you sign up for when you're in sales. It's objective. So as a retention mindset, it has to be a favorable culture that is publicly positive. If there's anything that needs to be any corrective action or whatever, you take that one-on-one off to the side. You always have to make sure that the territory matches the quota, right? So the best salespeople I know do the math up front. When I'm recruiting, the best salespeople will want to know, you don't have to tell me the exact number, but about what's my quota going to be and what is my territory going to be exactly. And they'll do the math and figure out, can I overachieve? It's not, can I make my number? Can I crush my number? Because the most favorable comp plans have acceleration above 100%. And the best salespeople who make the most money, they know that's where you want to get to. You want to be at 200% of goal, because then you're going to have a massive commissions. So if you can couple the proper territory and quota balance, if you can get that straight, and foster a positive environment that's fun, that's actually enjoyable. And then probably the last thing I do, at least me personally, is I take a bit of I think it's called like a servant leadership role, where whatever the salesperson needs behind the scenes, I'll do it. Like, nobody wants to sit on legal calls. We had a huge deal with AT&T back in 2018, and I sat in on every legal call. I'm the one who was working with our counsel internally, and I let the salesperson go off and do his thing so that he didn't have to deal with it. So it's effective sales leadership to me is removing the sales prevention people and process that happens, because there's gates you have to get through. There's a required process to keep things orderly. Sales operations and finance have their roles in life, but at the end of the day, it's all about sales. And if you're doing it correctly and ethically, then speed is of the essence, and slowing down the sales process is never a good idea. So that was sort of one of the other sort of pillars of what I tried to build, was remove anything that lengthens a sales cycle. If it's a bad process, if it's an individual who's in the way, find a way to get around them and just get things done, pretty much. And if you do that, then good salespeople will hang out if they're having fun and making money, is the moral of the story.
Yeah, definitely. If you can take away the remedial tasks of anything of the sales process, if the salesperson can focus on doing what they're good at, which is getting on the phone or pitching clients, speaking to people, they're going to love it. That's what I love doing. I'm very fortunate that we've got a founder that has taken away all of my admin tasks and just gone and like, he'll do all of mine in regards to prospecting for like clients and everything. I just get sent these Excel spreadsheets with like, go and get these people. And I'm like, cool. Yeah. I'll just do that. Just use me at what I can and what I'm good at. I am so disorganized, it's unreal. Like, I have a method of madness, but if someone asks me, how do you approach stuff? It's like, you don't want to know. If I showed you my notepad, I've got drawings all over the front of it. I've got clients' names on the front of it, but I know where they are and I know how it works, which is fine. But I always say to any of my team, I'm like, copy what I say when I'm on the phone, but don't copy what I do when outside of that. Like, because you try and replicate it and it just isn't something. I'm just a bit unorthodox. Yeah. But when you can have, like, let's say our founder was laughing. He was like, Ollie, I've literally become your SDR. And I was like, you actually have. That you've gone from just being the founder that didn't want to do any work to suddenly being the SDR for me and someone else in the company, which is great. But it goes back to what someone said to me the other day, was that when you're a sales leader, let's say as a VP of sales, you should work for your team rather than having the mentality of your team works for you. Yep. And if you've got that, you'll be successful.
I couldn't agree more. And I'll take it as far as, there was one guy who was exceptionally talented on my team at Carbon Black and landed some huge deals. And he was just, his strategic thinking, understanding human nature and really thinking 5 moves ahead was awesome. But he was the worst administratively. His Salesforce.com was the sloppiest mess I've ever seen in my life. So I would submit his forecast to me. That was an example of like, okay, we're going to talk for an hour. I'm going to understand exactly what it is you're doing. I know how to characterize the deal. I'll go ahead and clean up Salesforce for you, and I'll submit your forecast to me so that it looks clean when the VPs above me look at it. So, because why wouldn't you want a guy like that out in the field, schmoozing partners and customers and gaining intelligence and getting closer to $1 million deal? Yeah, so. Definitely. Yeah, that notion of being a leader by basically supporting your team with, because each individual is going to have a different style and different requirements, but they should all be competitive but collaborative with each other. That's another angle that I bring up is, as a leader, I would not hire an individual who would poison the well of the team. Right? Mm-hmm. Everyone has to get along. Everybody needs to help each other out. It's basically us against the world is sort of the angle. And even if there's one really good salesperson that I know would be successful, if the personality type or style of selling was too aggressive internally or not collaborative, because some folks, and I did this when I was an individual contributor, back in the day, I was on the technical side of sales as an SE, and I would dig in and I'd put together a loose, relatively lightweight white paper that just sort of articulated some problem that I was trying to solve. And then I just give it to everybody. And hey, if you can use it, go ahead and use it and share, right? And then there's other folks who could create something spectacular and hoard it because they want to stand out and be the number one rep on the team at all costs. That's not how I like to roll. I'd rather have every single person on the team over goal than survive on one superstar that just, crushes everything. And then you got a few folks that are starving in the corner. That's no way to build a good culture.
Yeah, definitely. And I completely agree. I actually use the analogy of I turn it back into sporting, and I say, if I'm talking to a British person, I mention cricket, but if it's American, I'll mention baseball. But obviously in baseball, you've got your pitchers, you've got your fielders, you've got your batters. Obviously, you've got your batter is an individual performer. If he goes and hits a home run, that's him hitting it.
Yep.
But he is contributing to the bigger picture of that if he goes and scores multiple home runs, the team scores multiple home runs. So a sales team should be exactly the same. You can have a top performer, but if everybody else in the team doesn't perform, then that one performer isn't going to make the team win. Yes, okay, there are examples, don't get me wrong, where someone can hold up a team, but they're going to struggle. But if you can suddenly have a team of in cricket, the only way I can describe it is that if you had like 10 batsmen and they all scored 20, but you had one batsman that scored 100, well, the team that all scored 20 are winning. So you can have a team of just consistent performers, but you don't need that like one exceptional person. So it's a...
And that team of consistent performers is going to have a whole lot more fun than the other team.
Well, yeah, exactly. If you've got 10 people and they're all making loads of money together and they're going out and they're socializing, I know what it's like when all of my team are absolutely thriving, everybody's making loads of money, we've all got good paychecks. Oh my God, there's no better feeling. That you go to the end and we do one social at the end of the month and everybody's there like, so I'll get this round, rather than everyone looking at the one guy going, well, I know how big your paycheck was this month. Like, it's awful. I've been there, and it's just like, maybe I should dip in, and you don't have that much fun. So,
and it's a marathon too. It's not a sprint. If you could have a 3 or 4 year run at a tech company and have success, I'd call that a pretty solid tenure. And with the best teams that I've had, like at SentinelOne, for example, the salespeople they almost took turns stepping up and crushing it in a quarter, where it was pretty much a different rep per quarter for 6 quarters almost. It wasn't exactly 6 for 6, but somebody would step up and make the team's number, right? There was lumpy, in the early days in particular, it was quite lumpy. So while you're building your pipeline, which takes 3 to 6 months to do, no matter what you're doing, it takes at least a quarter or two to get things rolling. There would be somebody that would have the timing of the deal would work out, and it would be one person or maybe two who really contributed in a quarter. And then they would have a soft quarter subsequently, right? There's luck involved there where you can't help the timing of the deals. But if the team is synchronized, there was actually discussion around who's going to make the West's number this quarter, who's got the deal, who's going to do it. And then, when you get together in the quarterly business reviews and you're throwing cocktails back at night and having a nice dinner, you get the camaraderie and the open dialogue, and people help each other out. Naturally, like I probably help my team less than half the time, in the sense that when someone's new and they just start out, of course, I'm talking to them each day, each week, getting them going, but the team effectively buoys them up and say, oh, this is how I do it. Here's an email template for you that I generally start with, or here's my pitch, and let's sit in on some demos with me. So if you create that environment, it's contagious. It really is. It's people can see, the rest of the company can see the joy. And if there's financial rewards, everybody in the company benefits from that, because you want the whole company to grow, because that's where all of your opportunities come from, in expansion.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that goes on to a really cool topic in the sense of, from your side, are there any other sort of strategies or initiatives you've implemented to foster a culture of learning?
Well, I don't know that I've done anything specifically programmatically. I think the success that I've been fortunate enough to be around has been cultivated by hiring the right people and holding everybody accountable. Because as I had said earlier, hiring to me is the scariest part of being a sales leader, because in every case I've been tasked with either building a team from the ground up, either 0 or 1 or 2, got to take that to 6 or 8. And hiring people is, you can't know everybody that you're going to hire, right? So you're taking some risks and you're trying to network and back channel and figure out who's the right person. And inevitably, not every hire is going to work out. So in the spirit of keeping the team healthy and accountable, you have to hold everybody accountable, right? So having someone not work out, that's a terrible part of the job, is having to, manage somebody out or say, hey, look, this is just not working out. But if you don't do that, then you're lowering the standard of what's acceptable. And I think that when it comes to growth opportunities and personal development, the type of people that I hire are always on the lookout for that. They're always looking for the next thing. Maybe they want to be a manager. Maybe they don't want to be a manager. Maybe they want to move in. I'm a big fan of promoting inside sales to field sales. I've done that at every company I've been with, because I love the idea of seeing a pool of inside sales reps, who are banging the phones. And it's a tough job, man. You get hung up on, and people are rude to you, and it's like nasty. But to see someone fight through that and have a desire to get to the next level and move out to the field, putting themselves out there and having that competitive spirit, I love that, because they know the pitch, they know the company, And I trust that they're going to take that level of passion and bring it out to the field. They want to make more money. They want to have a little bit more freedom. And it's those personality types that are constantly on the lookout for new tech. Like the guys that I've hired currently, they know XDR, they understand endpoint security, and they see what Valley Cyber is doing, and it's like, oh, that's like the next cool thing. That you want to get that next cool thing and be right about this, because there's so much out there. There's so much marketing smoke and mirrors. It's really hard to figure out who's telling the truth and where are the lines blurred. So if you really believe that this works, like what I have right now is better than what is on the market, taking that passion out into the street is what people like doing. That's what I'm doing. That's why I came out of retirement. But the product that I have right now is better than what CrowdStrike has, what SentinelOne has. Anyone, it's without question, it's better. I know it's better, and it's protected by a patent. I have a legal moat around a better solution. I'm taking it to market.
Yeah.
One way or another, it's going to be in the market as far as I'm concerned. And having people with that rally and like, yeah, let's go, is sort of, people cluster. The A types do cluster together.
Definitely. And I think that goes for, obviously, there's been so many layoffs at the moment. If there is anybody on the market, I think, and it's the advice I give them is don't rush into the first opportunity that comes your way. Do take some due diligence of, is this product really something that is going to be needed in the market at this present moment in time, or needed in the next coming year, 2 years, 3 years time? Like, I think there's so many people I speak to and they're like, I really need a job, Ollie. And I'm like, look, if you can afford to wait an extra month and find that right role, do it. Because like yourself, you found a product, and there's another company I'm working with, Sierra. I did a podcast with them, one of my clients as well. Their space that they're in is so cool. And what they're offering is so unique that they're getting so much inbound business. They're a company that people want to work for. Like Valley Cyber, you've got a different solution that no one else is doing. As you said, it's patented. Like, it's just about going to find it. And hopefully people watch this and they go, oh, I didn't know about Valley Cyber. Reach out to you, hopefully. And you get to know people from that. So if you are listening and you are looking for a job, reach out to Mark if you think you got what if you think what you got what you take after listening to what he said, then that would be cool. But yeah, I mean, other than obviously having this, you talked about the career development, everything like that. A lot of what your team seem to be doing is developing each other, which is great. You've got the team in place. How do you personally go about identifying and nurturing the emerging leaders?
Yeah, that comes with managing through the deals, I think, is probably the best way for me to put it. When I was at SentinelOne, I experienced the hypergrowth that went from a product not working to the largest software cybersecurity IPO in history, right? It was like a crazy ride, on the way up. And it was basically understanding an individual's angle on the deal and how to get the deal done. So I prioritized my time based on deal size. So if I had 6 direct reports at any one point in time, there were, as I said earlier, there was probably 1, 2, maybe 3 that were working on the bigger deals that were going to make a big difference to the company. And of course, the executives do the exact same thing. They sort on deal size and work backwards from there. But seeing how an individual approaches a deal, the complex enterprise deals that have political implications within the customer's environment. Sometimes channel conflict will happen where you have multiple resellers. If it's a high profile deal and a logo that everybody wants for $1 million, it's not a secret generally, right? So you get a lot of attention, and observing how the salespeople would deal with the accounts political environment, any channel conflict that was out there, and then internally inside of SentinelOne, watching the behavior of, you need help. No one wins alone. You don't want to win or lose alone. You need to bring everybody in to a large deal, and seeing how position themselves and communicate inside the organization. Was there respect for the legal team? Was there an acknowledgement that our SLAs might not be up to par on the support side? We have to figure that out, whatever it is. I was with them every step of the way on all the internal stuff, and obviously observing the deal mechanics. I could tell a lot from that set of complicated interactions as to whether or not somebody was operating with the right compass, which is do the right thing for the customer. You want to make sure you're doing the right thing for the customer, and you're selling them the right solution, behaving in a way where if they say, hey, I've got a meeting with the CEO or the CISO or whoever it is tomorrow, I'm good, I don't need your help. Trust them and say, okay, there are some decisions where it's like, no. There are certain individuals where it's like, that's not going to go well. So it was really observing how individuals handled the complexity of the deals, but more importantly, the relationships all around the deal, the internal relationships, the channel relationships, the customer relationships. And when there was no need for me to engage, or if I had no concerns about any aspect of that, that's a good indication that that person is ready to move into a leadership role where they're not operating, I need this, this is my quota. Like if you're head down, just, focused on what you're doing, if you can see the big picture and you know that although it might not be a pleasant interaction that you have to have internally because you're going to be asking for something or doing whatever, you have to work with that person in the future. It's an organizational awareness and a sensitivity to what the other people in your organization who aren't in sales are doing. And what are they faced with? What's a day in their life look like? And if you're sensitive to that and you understand the complexity of what it takes to bring a product to market, and you can do it with grace and success, then you're pretty much ready to be a leader, assuming you want to be a leader. Some folks don't want anything to do with that.
No, definitely. I actually really like the way you broke it down and the analogy for it, because a lot of people, not saying what they've said is wrong before I insult anybody, but everyone's always been straight away to the point of, it's down to the characteristics of the individual. Like, are they someone who's just supporting their team and that's all they're focused on? But actually, you broke it down into actually how you evaluate it, and actually looking at the way they're handling deals is a great way to look at it. Because if you have that control and, as you said, the communication internally and externally, that's part of being a VP of sales. If you can't actually communicate internally effectively and ask for what you need or just go and get it or show initiative to do so, you're going to struggle. And that's some of the things that I try to communicate when an AE might say to me, Ollie, look, I want to be a VP of sales. And I go, okay, cool, that's fine. I'm happy to help you search, but why? Like, you've been crushing your numbers. Like, and if they turn around and I want a bit more money, and I'm like, well, you'll probably make more if you're an AE. And then they go, okay. Well, what are you seeing in the market? And obviously I get market insights, whatever it be, part of being consultant. And then it's like you meet someone and they go, I really want to help teams. And I'm like, okay, cool. What you like with dealing with politics and having to give bad news to people? Have you ever, what do you think about firing someone? Yeah. And then it's not something that anyone can prepare for. When I first started this job, I was as a manager in the role for 3 months and I had to let go of someone. It was the worst thing I've ever done in my life. Sitting there, the person had been on performance plan. So in my mind, it was like, okay, he knows he hasn't hit it. They're going to expect it, blah, blah, blah. No, that wasn't what was expected. So it was like, but yeah, so unless you're the sort of personality that can sort of do that and brush it over, then leadership isn't for you. And it doesn't mean that your career stops there, because there is definitely so many other routes you can take, or, generally money is probably your motivator, and I'm sure you can go and crush your numbers and maybe get a nice payout at some point and retire lovely. But
I think I probably learned more about being an effective leader when I was vice president of systems engineering at Foundry Networks that got acquired by Brocade. And the only reason that I say that is because I directly reported to the CEO, Bobby Johnson, and had access, and I was at headquarters. So I had access to basically everybody. I had access to support. I had access to engineering, customer success, marketing, finance, operations. I had access to everybody. And I was in a role that it was in sales, but it was the technical support of sales, that, basically what an SE does, but at an executive level. Yep. And I would work directly with sales reps in the field. Actually, in that role, it was reps in Germany and in the UK. And they're trying to land this logo, and maybe it's BMW. And to them, all they see is BMW. I want to win BMW. But getting back to the office, meeting with engineering and support and operations and talking about the product roadmap, it's like, okay, well, we can either drop what we're doing and get that logo, or we can keep our eye on the ball with the current product roadmap that affects millions of dollars of other business across, potentially hundreds of customers, right? Seeing the impact of sales guys want to do one thing, They want to sell stuff. And there's an impact. There's an impact to engineering. If we're trying to sell something that isn't what's on the truck right now, and you need to tweak the direction of the product roadmap, that's an executive level decision. You have to figure out what's the right thing to do for the business. And conversely, existing customers who are mad because something doesn't work, sitting next to the VP of support and hearing exactly what's going on and why gives you awareness of how the company works. So, I would just basically say that, anybody who's interested in moving up into the leadership world at, say, a VP level, as much understanding as you can possibly get about how your company works and what is each functional leader responsible for, what keeps them up at night, what are they doing and why. And if you can put that big picture together, it will help to formulate, an operating model in your head where you're going to make decisions, informed decisions, and you'll be more comfortable assuming risk and being willing to go ahead and make a decision that you might regret it, but maybe not, right? And again, in a tech environment, time kills deals. Like, you have to move quickly in tech. So more situational awareness and organizational understanding the better. The more of that, the better, just so that you can so your operating parameters as you're leading this effort in sales. You got to know what you're doing behind the scenes. When you're carrying that flag up the hill, you want everyone to have your back, and you have to fully understand the implications, and you can't operate in a vacuum. There can't be any silos.
No, definitely. I completely agree. What I'd love to delve on to, and it's literally the final two questions of the podcast, what I'd like to focus on and around is sort of a little bit about personal life. So all about sort of work-life balance. Obviously, it's a massive thing in sales. People seem to struggle with it. We work silly hours, or we just get obsessed with our work. Is there anything that you've done or changed about your personal life to sort of have a bit more balance?
Well, the work-life balance, the origin is discipline. You have to, in a work from anywhere remote environment, or just in the field. If you're in sales in the field, like we said earlier, there's, work ethic. You have to be competitive and driven and motivated. I think that initially, whatever job, whatever role you're in, whatever company, you're going to have to suck it up for 6 months or a year. Like, you're going to have to just be prepared to lean more on the work side of things. That's why it's important to make decisions of major work changes with an understanding of the rest of your life. Like, maybe don't start a new job when you're going to get married next month or have a baby, You have to figure that stuff out sort of initially. But once you understand the organization you're in and the culture, making sure that you're in a culture of respect and transparency and good, healthy ethics and work ethics, you'll find a way, you need to find a way to balance things out. When I was at F5 Networks, I was there for, I think, 6 years. For the first year, I remember it was rough. It was one of those, it's an hour drive in, hour and a half drive back, that kind of thing. But once I established credibility by being successful and hiring good people and being able to articulate my business clearly to the CEO and everybody else, once they knew they could trust me, I was able to craft my time, call it just 50-hour week, whatever, however you want to, 40, 50, 60, pick a number. But I was an assistant Little League coach for my son for all of his Little League career, from when he was a T-baller all the way up until he went on to pitch in high school. So I found a time to be in the dugout with him on, I don't know if it was Tuesdays and Thursdays at 3:30 or something like that. Every so often, am I that guy, on the phone, on the sideline? Yeah, maybe. But fundamentally, I was there because it was critical to me to have that time with my son. So you need to figure out what's important to you. And it doesn't have to be that. It can be vacationing or whatever it is that's important to you. But you have to earn your way to the flexibility, is, I guess, how I would characterize that. You can't just say, I want a work-life balance, so I'm going to do what I feel like when I feel like it. And on the converse, you don't want to work 80 hours a week and have no friends and no life. So build your credibility, build your personal brand inside the company, demonstrate some success, and then you can selectively pivot and build your calendar basically around what keeps you happy every week.
Yeah, definitely. It's a funny aspect because, and it comes down to trust again. We as a company, we actually have our model is we have unlimited holiday. So I could take off as much time as I want. It's not going to affect my salary, whatever it be. But when we've hired some people and they haven't come from this environment, we saw very quickly that suddenly, oh yeah, I booked off the next 4 weeks, like every Monday. And I'm like, no, but that's not how it works. Yeah, but we've got a limited holiday. And I'm like, but you've just started and you haven't done any deals. You haven't shown to me what you're worth. You haven't, like, they're like, yeah, but just, I'm not much of a Monday fan. I've got like some stuff at the weekend. I'm probably going to be hungover or something. And I'm just like, we can't, like, so me and the founder like looked at each other and went, I think we might have shot ourselves in the foot here. We need to change the model completely. In the end, we obviously sat everyone down and was like, look, we have an unlimited model, but that doesn't mean that you just get a limited holiday when you first start. At least try and prove to us first that we should trust you, that you deserve a limited holiday.
So on that, the reason that exists, in my opinion, the reason that unlimited PTO exists, at least from my perspective, is you get 2 weeks of PTO, right? Generally, used to be get 2 weeks off, and then over time you'd increase that. So after 3 years, I think by the time I was done at F5 Networks, I think I was accruing 4 weeks of PTO a year, and it didn't go away. But you can't take 4 weeks off effectively and expect to be productive. So the problem was the really good salespeople, the really good individual contributors weren't taking time off. They weren't taking any time off. They might take a week or whatever, but you can't do it if you're going to be productive and you're competitive and you're working your ass off. So then when someone leaves, they'll have like 3 months of PTO accrued. It's like a built-in severance package, right? And the finance teams hate that stuff. So that's the reason for it. It's unlimited and you're not tracking it and there's no rollover. It's just like, do your job, man. You do your job and take time off when you need to take time off. Like, go ahead and recharge your batteries, but you can't be gratuitous about the whole thing.
No, exactly.
It's just kind of fun. We have unlimited PTO too. And it's like, okay, I guess I'll take next Friday off. Like, but does it really happen? No, because my phone's with me and I'm going to answer the phone when it rings.
Well, that's the thing. I've been with Scale Genesis for coming up to 9 months now. I haven't taken any holiday. And my last company, I was limited to 21 days and you were made to take it. Otherwise the holiday just got wiped off completely. So I took 21 days just because I could. I got to Christmas and I went, well, I'll take off an extra 6 days because I'm not getting the money for it. It's getting wiped off. And technically it's a paid day. So I might as well. But I mean, I always took it off when I was quiet. That was my worst bit. The first 2 years of doing recruitment, I didn't go on holiday. I wouldn't take a week off. My missus was going crazy. She was like, Ollie, we got to go on holiday. I was like, no, if I go on holiday, I'm going to miss deals. I'm going to miss jobs and I'm going to lose money. And I got super upset. But going back to the work-life balance, I had no balance because I was just like, if I had a day off, I was always on my phone. But my balance was that I've got more balance now because I worked so hard when I first started, because I got myself into a good situation and financially I have that one less stress. So I'm more balanced because I focus on my job and not on if I can afford to pay my rent or my bills or my car or whatever.
Yep.
So,
and sorry to cut you off. One thing I would add to that is one of the things that I encouraged on the team was, okay, all right, fine. You got a European vacation. You're going to be there for 10 days or whatever it is. I'm not doing all your quotes for you. Like, that's not going to happen. So you work with the team. So they would work amongst themselves, and it would either be an inside salesperson or a peer in the same region, whatever it is, helping with that work-life balance where it's like, I've got a special event. I've got whatever going on. And of course, I would do what I had to do to help out. But I would encourage everybody to make sure if you do have something that is significant and it's a chunk of time that's meaningful, a week or 2 weeks, set up your own ecosystem of people who will help out. And then there's reciprocity. If everybody just helps out and shares the load, then you'll have a work-life balance because everybody has a life, So
yeah, no, definitely. And I think one last question, it's not something that I gave you to prepare for anything, but if 25-year-old Mark could ask Mark today one question, what would you probably ask yourself?
That's a good question. I think maybe it would be, when does it end? And I say that in because I've worked my entire life. Look, I started my first job when I was 13 years old. I left home at 19, and I've just been working my whole life. And I always thought there was this goal line that once I crossed it, I would be retired and happy. And what I learned, in this past the year that I took off, is that it's not really an end game. It's more of a quality of life and what do you want to do all day? And it's like, I don't know how I would unprogram myself. Like I've been programmed from an early age to just work.
Yeah.
And when I was able to just stop working, I didn't know what to do with myself. I would probably say, how do you plan for the end of what you're doing? And it should, and my thought on that is that being abrupt is a bad idea. Abrupt stopping is a bad idea. And that's why I got back into the workforce to bring this product to market. But even when this is successful, so, knock on wood, it's successful, I'm going to stay involved with various organizations, maybe try to be an advisor, help out one way or the other, but it's not like an abrupt, that's the end of the line thing. And it probably didn't answer your question, but it's...
No. That's exactly the sort of answer that I look for from, this is why I don't give people time to prepare, because they'll spend a lot of time and they'll think, actually, yeah, this is a great question. But actually, what you get is an honest answer. So I've had so far people say, are you happy? Was it worth it? Stuff like that. And from you, when's the end? Like, but it gives this honest answer and this sort of thing of like, I'm 25. That's why I didn't just pick a random age out of there. But it's something that I'm getting to ask these questions to people like yourself. And it's like me thinking in my head, I was like, yeah, I want to retire by the time I'm like, I don't know, 40. And then it's like, but then I can't play golf every day. I definitely would end getting probably bored of it. Or I'd end up with like a handicap of 1 or scratch or something. I'd hope so if I was playing that much. But it gives a real answer. And I think it's also fun for the listeners to listen to, which would be cool. But I really appreciate your time today, Mark. It's been great chatting with you. And I'll keep you up to date with obviously once we get everything edited and when everything goes on Spotify, LinkedIn, everything like that.
Well, you're doing pretty damn well for yourself at 25. So it's been a pleasure chatting with you, and wish you the best of luck. And if you ever want to chat again, I'd be happy to.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your time, Mark. Much appreciated.
All right. Take care.
Catch you a bit. Bye.